Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Strategy Gaming Dojo, where we find, learn, and play one more turn. And today we are going to do episode number 2 of our basic tutorial for Gary Grigsby's War in the East. As you may know, if you watched the first episode, I'm very excited to do this one. Love this game. It's right up there of my favorite games of all time. And the more people that play this game, the happier I would be. I think that you will all enjoy it. If you're interested in it at all or the subject matter on the Eastern Front of World War II, this game has so many hours of an enjoyment for you if you learn the basic systems. And as I said in the first episode, I know that there is a high cost of entry for this game. It seems very complicated, but I don't really think it is. Now, you may say, hey, it's easy for you to say you've played, 1,000 or so hours of this game, and so, of course, it's all just intuitive to you. I don't think that's the case. I think that Gary Grigsby and the development team really did a fantastic job of taking all of the elements of a war board game, which this is. It's a massive one that only really the PC could do correctly. I think they took all the best elements of a board war games and boiled them down into their essential parts. And so I really don't think it's that complicated for the moves and the systems and how you do things. I do think it's complicated to try to win the war, which I guess the Nazis found out as well. This is a monumental task to try to overcome the Russian landscape, the Russian manpower that eventually comes to bear, and maybe most importantly, the Russian weather. And so that is what I'm going to be trying to teach you how to think about it anyway. I may not teach you how to win the game, but I may teach you how to play the game, and then you can start thinking about those things. So now last time we went through our 3 tabs up here: map information, info screens, administration. I think we covered those pretty extensively. They're not really that hard, or there's not too much there that would not be common to you as a player of computer games in general. You know, hotkeys, saves, preferences, options and preferences. That's the whole administration tab. Info are just databases. Now we will get into the air war and talk about what this air doctrine screen means. But for now, just don't worry about that. Just know, okay, well, there's an air doctrine button. We'll get to that. It's not that complicated when we spend a good, 30 to 45 minutes talking about the air war in this game and how it works. You'll be able to go to the air doctrine screen and say, okay, I know how to set this up. I may not know the optimal way I want it done for how I want the air war run, but that's okay. That's the point of playing the game, right? Um, you have weather, you have victory screens, you have production screens. We'll talk more about production, but you have losses and you have order of battle. These are all just normal things that if you've ever played a war game before, or even just strategy games, they're kind of normal screens that you would see. You have the commander's report, extremely important because you can go through and find out pretty much any bit of information on the big level that you want on any item in the game. And then if you want to go down to the base level, we can get down to these things, and we will. We'll go over here to, well, better get out of that. We'll go down to their hex and we'll go look at this thing. We'll talk about what makes this up, what you really need to know, because I feel like there are kind of 2 ways you can play this game. Well, there are a million ways you can play this game, but 2 ways from a grand overview, the 10,000 foot look at it, is you can play this game as a straight up hex and counter game, just looking at the numbers that you see right here. Okay. And if you've ever played a war board game, you're like, okay, this is combat power, these are movement points, and off we go, right? You can get much deeper if you want to and start thinking about what actually makes up these units. Oh, I actually just did an attack there. I didn't mean to. What makes up these units, where they are, how they get resupplied, and we'll go into that. Of course, we will. But you know, don't think that you have to know exactly how many, mortars are in this infantry division because you don't. You don't, and you don't need to know that to enjoy the game and to win the game. It's not even like you have to know that to be a very good player of the game. So anyway, that's my big introduction, my big spiel this time. Let's jump back in to learning the game itself. And this time, I know it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but I do want to go back to options and preferences. Now, we could do it from here. I understand that. But we're going to exit the scenario and go back to the first screen you're going to see when you load this game up. Okay? And it's not that complicated. Again, the options and preferences here are nothing, they're not, rocket science, no pun intended. It is pretty basic for a game this big and this complicated, or that people think is this complicated. Axis human, axis computer, Soviet computer, Soviet human. You have play by email over here if you want to play another human. Of course, there's no better way to play any game than to play against another advanced primate. Look, there are a lot of people that play this game. If you want to play by email, you can find them pretty easily. I would say, play the computer on a decent difficulty setting a few times, then go play by email, get your butt kicked by somebody that's really good, and you will learn more than you could ever learn from me talking for 100 million hours. You know how that is. It's all about experience a little bit, but hopefully I can give you the tools to at least stay competitive. Let's say that, right? Difficulty, and we'll get into what exactly this means in a minute, but difficulty impossible, easy, normal, challenging, hard. There's 5 settings. We're going to be playing for the Let's Play. We're going to play hard, but I'll show you why in a minute. Um, there are a lot of scenarios for this game. You may not have them all because this had 2 DLC packs. I think it's the Dawn to the Danube and also Lost Battles. And so a lot of these independent scenarios, I say independent, I don't really know what that means in that context, but these scenarios here came along with the DLCs. Not all of them, right? The Lucky Lukey here, the tutorial, you can play this tutorial. And people ask me all the time, should I play the tutorial? Sure, you should play the tutorial. Why wouldn't you? So, you can play the tutorial. It's there for a reason. Read about it, take your time, maybe try some different things. And that's what the tutorials and the scenarios are really good for in this game, I feel like. I will say I don't have the DLC packs, so I'm not exactly sure which ones. So Road to Leningrad, I knew that that is something that a lot of people play just starting off. You go north, and it's 17 turns, very quick, right? Smolinsk is also an introductory scenario in the main game pack. And again, it's 10 turns. You're trying to get to Smolensk as the Germans as fast as you can, right? And then I think you have Kiev down here. Again, yeah, this is part of the main game pack. But then you have, interesting things that came out in the DLCs. That's Barbarossa, so that's 24. Let's just, I think, oh gosh, of course, now I can't find one. When I was doing this before I started recording, every single one of them was in one of the expansions. Gary Grigsby's Dawn to the Danube expansion, you can play Operation Uranus, the historical Operation Uranus. It's 6 turns, right? Um, and so you can go through, mess around with all these. Admission, I don't often play individual scenarios. I guess maybe when I first start playing a game, I maybe will mess around with one, and then once I kind of think I know what I'm doing, I jump into the campaign. That's just me. I know that there are people out there that don't have the time to play a 224 turn scenario of the whole Eastern Front of World War II. They've got kids, their job, their and I'm not saying I don't have some of those things, but I get it. If you don't have time to play the whole campaign game, I'm just telling you how I am. Now you see up here, this is the main campaign. This is, scenario number one, the big campaign, the one, the developers wanted to be, on the marquee. Let's put it that way. Um, but we, as I mentioned before, are going to be playing the bitter end. The bitter end has victory conditions, victory points. You saw the little flags last time. We get so many points for getting to places. I just like playing it better that way. I know that historically, the Germans didn't get any points for the days that they held Kiev. That being said, I'm also not a field marshal down in the Ukraine. So, oh, one thing I did want to mention is someone brought up in the comments that last episode I kept saying Russians, the Rus, the old, well, I don't want to go down that road because I'm sure this person or someone else will correct me of the history of the Rus, the Russians. Um, the USSR was made up of many republics, of course, not just the Russian republic. And so, yes, it is the USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. And I will be referring to that as the USSR, the Red Army, from now on, and not just the Russians. I get that there's a lot of I wouldn't like it, I guess, if someone called me an Illinoisian because I'm from Chicago originally. It is not called Illinois, it is Illinois, and I get very upset about that. No, I actually don't, but it is weird when I hear somebody say it. And so if you're from that part of the world, or you are Russian, or you are from another part of the old USSR, it may sound weird to you to hear me say Russian when I'm talking about the Red Army or the USSR or the former communist government that controlled the USSR. But that's just, shorthand. Obviously nothing was meant by it. I just think of them as being the Russians, but they're not. It's the USSR, it's the Red Army, and I will refer to them as such. So anyway, the bitter end. Let's get out of here. We've already picked well, we'll come back and pick our scenario, right? Load save game. I think everybody knows what that means, right? Multiplayer, difficulty hard. Okay. Then we just have these two menus we have to worry about. Game options, fine, and preferences. Okay, let's deal with preferences first. Preferences, for the most part, are personal preferences. I can't sit here and tell you how you want to set this up. It's going to differ based on what kind of machine you're running the game on, how you like to see information presented, how fast you like the scrolling, et cetera, et cetera. So we're just not going to spend a lot of time on this. I kind of play the defaults because I'm used to the defaults, but if you ever change things around, you can always change it back. I will say the one thing, well, there's a few things down here for maps. Hex grid, I always like hexes, and I always like a jump map. Um, Having these icons, I think, is helpful as well as the Army front colors. I think that's very helpful. I don't think I've ever played the game without those, and I'm not exactly sure how comfortable that would be. It would be very difficult to do. Showing the move path. Now, some people, this annoys them. So let's get out of here. Let's go to the bitter end. Okay, and let's load it up. Okay, when I click on this unit, you see you see the move path here. I really like this. It shows you where your valid moves are, and it shows you how many movement points. So you can see here, originally this unit, this Panzer unit, has 50 movement points. It moving here takes it down to 33. Okay, we're moving into Soviet zone of control, and we'll talk about all of this. You can tell because it's a light pink, right? Um, and so this is taking a lot of movement points, and then we have no valid move beyond that. Now we can attack after that. You could move and attack as long as you have movement points to do so. But these are the only valid movements. Now you see if we moved backwards, that takes one movement point. So I like this a lot. I like the system a lot. But some people don't. What can I say? Some people, oh, whoops, I meant to go back to preferences. Some people don't like that. So that's show move path, show allowed movement. I also just showed you that. You saw the squares kind of lighten up a little bit, even in the Russian. God, I just did it, didn't I? I did it twice. Even in the Red Army Soviet, is Soviet okay? In the USSR's hexes, you saw those light up because we could move there, and that's, show allowed movement. Unit values displayed type. Numerals. You can also do these by bars. I would find that difficult to follow. I mean, I can follow bar charts, but I would much rather see the numbers. And all that is the combat value and the movement points are shown as numerals as opposed to bars. Uh, I don't know that I've ever seen them displayed as bars. I always have this on numeral. Unit counter info. So I was just talking about this combat value and move. You could also have combat that it shows. CV and move or combat. I always have this as the number, the combat value of the unit to the left and the movement points to the right. And I just showed you that, I don't want to come up here and just show you things that are so obvious, but these are such core concepts. I just want to show them again really fast, which is combat value, movement points. Okay, and we can go look at movement points, how much it costs to move into certain terrain and whatnot. But basically, when I click on this, it will show me my valid moves, and it will show me not only how much it costs to go into each hex, but to get to the destination and different destinations. That's why I like this thing, right? So if you think about it, if we're going here, we're really moving into a lot of Red Army zone of control here. And so it's all the way down to one movement point. Whereas if we go here, we still have 7 left. And so it's maybe too advanced concept now, but there are two different kinds of attacks in this game. There's a hasty attack and a deliberate attack, and you will need so many movement points left once you move to do those. Now, many times you'll be doing them right from the start, okay? So you don't have to necessarily, worry about that. Well, you do, it costs points. And there's a reason why you would do a hasty attack. And if you hit shift when you're over the enemy unit, that's a deliberate attack, okay? And that obviously that's something we're going to get deeper into later, but that's all thinking about movement points. Well, you know what? I'm not even going to get out of the scenario this time. I'm going to go right up here because you can change the preferences right up here on our administration tab. So CV move, hex pop-up location is where the cursor is located. You can also do it at a specific position. I'm not really sure why you would do that. No, let's get out of that. Oh, shoot. No, no. Let's get back to, oh gosh, we're gonna have to get all the way out of here. I'll get that back to cursor soon enough. Um, Show weather graphics, yes. Show river rail info, yes. Again, this map is not too cluttered. Now you can see when I go over these things, it's not giving me the pop-up information. Oh my gosh. I have to figure that out very quickly. It's going to drive me. Oh, I see. So wait a minute. Now it shows it. I've never noticed that before that you could do that. It shows it up in the upper left instead of showing it out here. Hmm, that's interesting. That's actually good for a tutorial because if you haven't done one of these before, it becomes very annoying because the tooltips, which you enjoy when you're playing the game and they give you a lot of information, they oftentimes get over what you're trying to describe. And this pops it right up there at 0, 0. I did not know that. Well, okay. Cool. I will keep it. I will keep it at 0, 0 here. Uh, you always learn something new. I find that when I make these tutorials, I learn as much as I do playing the game or when I was first learning the game. You just learn all kinds of things when you're trying to explain it to someone else. So anyway, hex pop-up locations now at 0, 0. We got it. You can always go back to um, reset to default. Again, I always pick more information rather than less here. So that's preferences. I'm not going to get out of the game again. You can do this again at the startup screen. You saw the game options, but let's go to game options here. Again, very simple. There's not a lot to it. Computer controlled. Who's the AI controlling? Well, it's the Red Army. We've got that checked. Fog of War. Of course, we're going to play Fog of War, but we're also going to play Movement Fog of War. This is a little different kind of concept, but it's essentially hiding things from us where we're moving to. Okay, so you just saw that we can move around and we can see how many movement points it takes, but that is also going to be under the fog of war. It may not be giving us perfect information, and we may not know exactly what's out there, which I think adds a much better realistic element, especially to the war here on the Eastern Front. So I play with that on for both sides. I guess I could turn it off for the AI, and they could know where I am. Eh, whatever. I also always like to play with maximum fog of war when I play a game because I like to fly recon missions. I think it's an interesting part of warfare. I think it's an interesting part of gaming warfare. And I think it's maybe sometimes underappreciated and underrepresented. A big part of warfare and air warfare is recon and knowing what exactly. Have you ever stood back and thought about like these Civil War battles, right? And you can see the units on the screen and you go and move and you're like, gosh, I wonder why Robert E. Lee did this, or I wonder why Napoleon did that. Why would he make that mistake or go this way? Well, those guys were operating under a true fog of war. They had cavalry out there where they were getting written messages back saying, I think there might be 5,000 people over here by this river. And oftentimes I think war gamers, they think that warfare is as easy as these tiles and these counters out here on these hexes, and they're like, well, why would this general do that or that general do this? Well, a lot of times they were just operating under bad information. They were operating under very little information, and so I think there is a tendency to be a little harsh on commanders when it comes to actual warfare by people that play war games. And so I like the recon and the ultimate fog of war. If it causes us to make a mistake, hey, that's just more fun when you're playing the game. We want a challenge, right? If you just want to say, hey, I took Moscow, put it on easy. Um, run your Panzer straight to Moscow and take Moscow, and then you can tell all your friends at a dinner party, you probably won't be doing that, but you can brag to some of your other friends that play war games that you did it. But ultimately, I like a challenge. I like Fog of War. Okay, lock headquarters support. We are going to get into this in a different episode. This is one of the most important, I would say it's the most advanced part of the game and the most important part of the game. This game this is what makes command headquarters very important. This idea that there are battalions that are controlled by your headquarters units that they send out to divisions to act as various kinds of support. Okay. And that's all I'm going to say at this point because I am going to maybe do maybe a whole episode, but at least half of an episode talking about support units and how they're handled in this game. I think it's quite genius. I've never seen it in another game. Other than maybe in Grigsby game, but the way support units are handled here are really very interesting. Now, I know some people struggle with the concept, and I do understand that, but we're going to unlock that riddle, and so stick around for that because it really is the most advanced and important concept in the game, I believe. Non-random weather. Okay, we're going to have historical weather. That's fine. We'll check that. Reduce blizzard effect. Why would we do that? We're playing the Axis. Let's give ourselves a challenge. Now, the Soviets, and I like this, I like when a game gives you a chance to give the AI a buff. Now, I would tell you, why would we be giving them an attack buff early in the game? Because they are not going to be attacking, or at least not often, and it's generally just going to be to try to get into our supply lines. Um, and break out of encirclements. And so we're actually going to give them a buff to their defense. You can always come back in here and change that, and we will at the start. Well, in the winter of 41-42, we'll change that to attack, depending on how everything's going. CV mode is default. I'm going to put it to better CV math without going into the whole algorithm. This basically just gives you a more realistic, here's one, combat value. So this 12 maybe is actually 13 or 14. We could talk about why it's different. It really doesn't matter. I would rather it be more accurate. I guess people could say, hey, that's kind of like fog of war, though, right? If it's less uh, accurate. And you see, there's a bunch of different derivations of that. If somebody really wants to know, let me know down in the comments and we can go down that and talk 5 or 10 minutes about it. I just generally play with better CV math. Maybe other people don't. I don't actually know. When I played play by email, everybody's always been fine with that. So, okay. General difficulty level, I like to play games as hard as I can. I don't like when something says impossible. Now, we set that up on the other screen to say hard. And ultimately, what does that mean? It means, as the Germans, this is our penalty. We're playing at 80% of normal, and the Russians are playing at 125% of normal. Now, you may say that is bold, my friend, for a let's play that this is going to turn into. And you're right. And maybe I should go back and change that. Now, after I saw the numbers, I was like, wow. Okay. We'll talk about that later. Um, but right now I have it on hard. So 80 and 125. And I'll be very open and upfront about that. I don't care. If the AI beats my butt, you can say, I could have done it better than that guy. Maybe we'll just leave it right here. So it's morale, fort levels, logistics levels, transport levels, and admin levels will be at 80%, the Russians 125. But as you can see, I mean, this is very easy to change. It's very easy to understand. Gosh darn it, not the Russians, the Soviets, the USSR is getting a 25% buff. We're getting a 20% penalty. Maybe I should reset to default. No, I won't do it. Okay, and that's it. That's options and preferences. And you may say, well, really? That's all we have to decide to play the game. That is all you have to decide. Okay? Where are we here? 30 minutes. Perfect. Okay. So we've got all of that out of the way. The screens, the tabs up here, the options and preferences. I know it's not always the sexiest thing when we talk about options and preferences. I try actually not to label that episode options and preferences because I find that it gets much less viewership than if I name it blowing up the Red Army or something. Um, so, but I think it's integral part of you enjoying the game. I always hate when I load up a game and I kind of go through the options and preferences and I'm like, well, I know what that means, sort of, but I really don't know what that. Okay, well, I'm just going to play the game because I don't know what any of this even means. I would much rather you understand it. You can pick the game that you want to play that way. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's get down here into what I call the mode bar, I guess. And this determines, okay, forget these two. Oh, I get a draw. Let me draw. Will you guys bear with me while I make a box here? Yes. Forget about these two for the time being. This is just next turn, which is also F12. You can see the hotkey there. This is just shift because a lot of times in this game you need to shift and it changes the orders or how you're giving orders. Um, and so they've given you a shift key. I always use the one on my keyboard and you can see it blink on and off here as I hit my own shift key. I like to do that. And never forget, shift H is our hotkey zone, and you can see all the different shift commands. There are also control, but the control is really how you view things. You see here what you're highlighting is based on control. Shift, some of these are real commands like create fortified unit in the selected hex. This is like entrenchment essentially. Um, and so, these are commands, shift, and so they give you that. You can also, again, from administration, get it up here and do it from there. Let's go over, I like to be on the map information screen. I like to have enemy hexes on. I like to have fort levels on so we can see what we're dealing with, okay? Other than that, that's about it. I mean, you are going to want to see the rail damage. And I know we went through all these, but I'm just talking about how I look at the game when I'm playing it. You are going to want to see rail damage as we get out into Russia, as you as we get out into the Soviet Union. Um, these are, well, we'll get into that when we get into railroad. But essentially, these are all green because they're in German controlled territory, which is Poland over here. So, what do we have down here? This is the mode that we're going to be in when we give orders. That's the best way to think of it. Again, forget these two, shift, next turn. Also, you can forget about F11, which is show battle sites. Now, of course, we haven't had any yet. We haven't had any battles. And so there's nothing to show. But after the first turn, everywhere where there's a battle, you will see this icon that you can tell it looks just kind of like this, like a bomb exploding. And you can go there and look at the results of that combat. Okay? So these three, again, turns informational. The rest of these are how you will be giving orders in the game. And F1 is straight up move mode. That's it. It's move mode. So let's take this unit right here. You left click to select a unit. When you select that unit, oh, well, here's a shortcut that we will definitely be using, and that is Shift Z. This doesn't show it very well. Let's do it down here. That shows it. Okay. You will always want to have Shift Z on. And again, we're going to go into command in its own episode, but this is such an important way, in my opinion, to play the game and to visualize and see the game that I wanted to point it out here. Shift Z gives you so much information. Now, this is a headquarters unit. Okay, and the current unit that's selected will be in purple when you play the game with Shift Z. Now you don't have to sit here and hold Shift. I'm not holding Shift Z. I've just made this selection. So let's turn it off. Let's click on this unit again. Now you see you can do it a different way if you want. Now let's hit Shift Z again. Now it's nothing. Now the unit you've selected will always be in purple. okay? And oh shoot, I hit Z itself. Z itself is a whole different uh, ball game. It shows you the combat value. So basically, when you hit Z, just Z, it shows you offensive combat value and defensive combat value. Okay, and that's what that combat selection was when we went over preferences. But I always play it with movement points on. Okay, so and again, that's the hotkey Z. But we're talking about Shift Z. And if we look at our hotkeys, we'll see exactly what Shift Z is. Toggle command links. Okay. Now, if we only have one level of this on, our current unit is in purple. It will have an orange line and an orange square around its command unit. So this is the unit that is directly above this unit in the command structure. And you can see that, right? Because this is a corps headquarters. This is an army headquarters. 4 X's, army headquarters. 3 hexes, corps headquarters, okay? And so when we have this unit selected, it's in purple. It will have an orange line up to the unit it is subservient to, or I've just been playing Crusader Kings. This is its liege. No, this is its command unit. And you can always see where its command unit is. You can also see all of the units it's in command of in blue if they're in command radius of it. If they're not in command radius, they're highlighted in red. Now, you may say, well, what about these yellow things over here? I actually find that somewhat distracting. These are units that are at the same rank, okay? So if you look at this headquarters unit, this is the the headquarters we were just looking at. It commands this. It also commands this and this and this. These are all of its units that it commands. Well, if we look at ours, you see these are highlighted. All of the ones that this commands, so that are on the same rank or level as this headquarters, show up yellow. Now you may say, why is this showing me a different kind of graphical representation? Well, just every time it's not looking exactly like you want it to, just hit Shift Z. Okay, so it's showing us nothing. They're still highlighted, right? Okay, they're highlighted under this mode, but hit it again. Now it's going to show us everything our selected unit commands. You're going to see every unit that it commands in the game here. And all of these blue lines, tendrils, whatever you want to call them, um, they branch out here to all of the units it commands, okay? And so if we go up here, same thing. Now you see this headquarters. Who is this headquarters commander? Well, it's all the way down here, and this is Army Group Center. So this is the command headquarters for Army Group Center. And you can see here is everything it commands. Its orange line goes up to where? OKH, and this is German High Command. German High Command, gosh, I'm sitting here doing like the command episode, but then you have Army Group Center, I'm sorry. Then you have our headquarters we looked at here. It's not the same one. Which one is it? Oh, it's right here. The Ninth Army, okay, commanded by Strauss at this point. That won't last long, let me tell you. 5.4 is not very good. Then the unit we've been looking at, Kunse, 4.6, which is terrible. He'll be out quickly enough. We'll replace him. But anyway, the point of this is I always play the game with maximum Shift Z on because every unit you click on, you can see who their commander is and you can see who they command. Okay. Now look at this unit. This is a great example of how this works for individual units. Of course, we were on a headquarters. Look at this unit, which is the Polish SS Infantry Division. Okay. All it has is this orange tendril back to its command headquarters, of course. It does not command anything. It's a division. It doesn't have any command, headquarters command. So you see it's commanding division. You also see a division that's on the same rank that is commanded by the same headquarters in yellow. Okay, so I always play with maximum Shift Z. It can become a little confusing when you get in here with a huge headquarters, but not that much, not really, right? This is one of the bigger ones in the game here, and I don't think it's that confusing. You can see all of, gosh darn it, Shift Z. There we go. Um, and you can see all of the units it commands. Now we'll get into command some other time. I just wanted, I'm still talking visually here and how I like to play the game. And so with this, you can always see when something is out of command. When it's in command, it's parallel units of the same rank and who its commander is. Okay, now that we've done that, I'm actually going to turn that off for a moment after that long spiel. Maybe I'll keep the command one on, just the command one. Um, and I'm going to look at this unit here. So the Polish SS. The Polish SS has 16 movement points, okay? And we can see if we start to trace paths, the game will find the most efficient path to move where we want it to move. We are in move mode, and so we're seeing this, okay? Let's say that we're in amphibious transport mode. What do you see? You see dark. Why is that? Well, there's no water. There's no way for this unit to move by amphibious transport. And so it's blacked out. There's no movement numbers here. There's no movement, that line that we get. And so this cannot move by amphibious transport. What is this? This is naval transport. Again, darkened out. There's no, we can move this around. You can tell we've got this selected. It's orange. It's lit up over here. Now, I will tell you as part of the interface, you can click off of that and it will no longer be selected, or you can click on it and it's selected again. But we are in naval transport mode. Well, you look at this unit and you say, well, obviously this unit can't move by naval transport. It's not near any water. True. And that's why it's darkened out. Okay, so let's get off this unit and let's look at something that could possibly move by naval transport. This cannot, it's not available to it, and it at this moment is not available to move by amphibious transport. Now, if you click here on naval transport, you can see the hexes where it could possibly go. Okay, amphibious, no. But naval transport, let's see. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Let's try this again. And it cannot move by naval transport. So these two, I will tell you, in this game are just not used very much. I mean, you may have occasion to have something go by amphibious transport up here to get around someone. I know that the Russians can use it to effect out here in Crimea potentially. As the Germans, I guess you could sail out here and come around the Russians, but I'm telling you, 99.89% of the time, you're not going to be using the two different water movements. Okay? Um, Most of the time, 90% of the time, you're going to be on land movement, and that's what this squiggly line is. That's how you will generally be playing the game, is in land movement mode. So let's go back up here to our Polish SS unit, and let's say that we want to come right here. It charts out the path for us. Okay. All we have to do is right click and off it goes. And now it'll show us it has 11 movement points left, but it's that simple. You want to go forward one more, right click. You want to go back, right click, right. As long as this unit's selected, you can right click until you run out of movement points. And you can also go further, of course, than 1 hex. Let's say we wanted to go down here for some reason, right click and off it goes. And you see our command tendril is still here. We can see um, in this number over here, as a matter of fact, will tell us exactly how many hexes we are away from our command unit and how many hexes we have to be close to them to be within command of theirs, right? So we're actually out of command, and we will see that if we click here, it shows us out of command. But again, that's one of those things that's more of a command topic that we'll cover in that scenario. So let's go up here to the 86th Infantry Division, right? Again, the L Corps is shown right here. That is its command group, but that doesn't, matter for our purposes here. We can move, again, this exact same way. So if we're moving everything to the front here, all we would have to do is right-click wherever we want this thing to go. But let's say, hey, you know what? We're on this rail line right here. Let's try to move a little faster or more efficiently. Well, you could either hit F2 or you could hit rail. And when you hit rail and move back to the map, you will see everywhere that this unit could move by rail lit up. All right. Now, the game will not allow you to move into a hex next to the enemy. So that's why these are darkened out here. But other than that, you can move down this rail line and it will take so many rail points. You have a rail cap that you will constantly be trying to get higher, but we'll talk about that elsewhere. The point being is it's going to cost you so many points to go by rail, but you can go anywhere that is lit up here that is connected by rail. I mean, look at this. You can go all the way down here um, and see, it does not cost us many move points, obviously, right? Because we're just jumping on the train. So it's not costing this unit many rail or many movement points. Now it will count against your rail cap, so you have to keep that in mind. You can't just throw everything on here on rail, but you can really use rail to great effect because you can move all the way down here. So let's right click and you can see us on the train. And that's what that icon means. And when we get down here, we'll see that cost us approximately 3,500 rail points to come down here. And we can talk about how that's done. Now, one thing I will point out is when we click on this unit again, it will show here on train. And it's got this icon here. As you get closer to the front, or if you think you may get in battle and combat, you never want something to be on a train, a unit to be on a train. So we would click, get off the train, and now we've got, it costs 3 movement points to get off the train, but then, you know, oh, I'm sorry, we were still on rail mode. Shoot, I actually wanted to make a point there. Well, let's try this again. We're not going to do it with our main command unit. Let's do it with this security unit. And you'll see we're on rail mode again. And let's move by rail right here. Okay, you see it's on the train. Great. Let's take it off the train. Well, first of all, let's show it this way. Let's go back to move mode. Now, if we have it on move mode, it will take us off of the train automatically. Okay, so that's why these 2 buttons are very powerful. You're telling the game how you want to move. And so this is now out of movement points, this first division that we moved. But this second division, we moved it by rail down to here. And then all we did was move back to move mode and moved it. Okay, now let's try this headquarters. We'll do the same thing and we're going to move it down by the units it's commanding. Okay, so let's move it down here. You see it's now on the train because we have it in rail mode. Now let's take it off the train. That will automatically reduce its movement points, as it will if we just moved it over to move mode. But now it's still in rail mode. And that's what I did before when I said, oh shoot, we could still move this in rail mode. We have to move it back to move mode to have it move on land and not move on rail. And I hope that made sense. I'll do one more just to make sure. Now this is in move mode. Oh, I'm sorry, that has no movement points. This is in move mode. See, F1. We can trace, we can go places where there is no rail. Let's go right here, okay? So this unit marches to here on foot, or if it's motorized, in trucks, okay? It's basic move mode. But now we want it to get on a train. And as we move back onto the map, you'll see all of the different valid places it can go by the rail lines. And so let's take it right here, okay? Moves up here, fine. Now one of two ways to get it off the train. We can either click here and unload the unit from the train, or we can simply go back to move mode and go right there, and now it's off the train. Now, one thing I will point out about units, we're going to talk about what this green corner means here. Let's scoot way in. Green corner. This is what we call your soft factor, and our current soft factor is supplies. So this is showing green because this unit is in good supply. So you see the green right there. We can change that. That can be fuel, which will be very important. When we look at our Panzer divisions, we will always want to be looking at the fuel. How are they doing? You can also see that in the graphical representation over here. It's the three things that every unit has: supply, fuel, and ammunition. Now we're going to go into the unit card and talk about everything on the unit card, but I just want to point out what these mean while we're talking about movement. Because the one over here on the right, if we look at a unit we have not moved yet, so we have not moved this unit, you will see that the counter has this white with a black triangle in it. That means this unit has not moved at all. If we now, and we're always go up here and check, make sure you're in this, you don't want to start running around by rail when you're trying to move or moving when you're trying to go by rail. So always go up here and look. Now with this unit then, let's move it just one hex to right here. How about that? There it goes. It's right there. It has used up one movement point to make that movement. Now you see the black triangle isn't in there anymore. It's still white, meaning it still has movement points, but the black triangle goes away if you've moved it at all. Now let's go to this one, this unit that has 0 movement points. You'll see it does not even have the white up here in the corner. Okay, so this is your soft factor, which can be, as I said, supplies, fuel, uh, current units attached, and we'll get into that. It can be nothing if you don't like looking at things on the corners of your units. It can be morale, experience, or back to supplies. And this, I always find in board games or games like this game, this tells you what's really important in the game, because if they're willing to put it on the unit counter, it's probably pretty dang important to the game, right? So supplies, fuel, uh, units attached, which is that support that I was talking about before when it comes to headquarters, and we're going to do a whole section on that, so don't worry about it for now. None, okay, and you'll see, well, they still have the movement on, but it's not showing the soft factor, and that's what this is, the soft factor. Um, Morale, you'll see the German troops are generally in good morale. You can kind of use your common sense here. If it's green, that's probably pretty good. Orange is probably kind of medium or moderate, and red is probably bad. I'm just guessing there. No, I'm not. That is how it goes. Experience, and you'll see the Germans have a lot of experienced troops, actually. For the start of an engagement, for sure, a lot of these troops had been in the invasion of Poland and had also been through France at this point. Many of them had. So they do have some experience and back to supply. And that's what is on the left side of this counter. And so next time when we come back, I believe we'll go into the air war because these next modes all have to do with the air war, but they're not that complicated. You will very easily say, oh, okay, I understand how each of these modes work. But just remember, whatever you pick here is the mode the game is in when you go back to the map. Okay? So this is in ground movement mode. This is rail movement mode, right? This is naval transport mode. So if I click on this guy, I cannot move him on the ground because I am in naval movement mode. This is amphibious transport mode. Same thing. When I click on this unit, this is not eligible for amphibious transport, so it does nothing. I would have to be at a unit that could take advantage of an amphibious transport. And these are your four move modes for units. It's that simple. So next time when we come back, I do think I will start to touch on the air war because we're getting into the air modes here, and there are what, one, two, three, four, five, six of them, but they're all very intuitive and easy to understand. Yeah, so I think we'll do that, and then the time after that, we'll get into these unit cards. We'll talk more about what all of this means, what you're seeing down here. So, from Strategy Gaming Dojo, thank you so much. I'm having a blast talking about this game. It's a great game, and I really, if I can just get a few of you to understand it and play it, it will be mission accomplished for me because I would love to bring this game to everyone that I can that enjoys a good war game because it's maybe the best. So for Strategy Gaming Dojo, thank you so much. If you enjoyed this, you like it, you like my other videos, please give me a subscribe. I would appreciate it, or a thumbs up, or hey, just leave a comment and give me some feedback. I always appreciate it. So thank you very much. I'll talk to you next time.